We're at 1, not a 2.
Not sure I actually need a microphone today. Okay, everybody awake? I'm mostly awake, not 100%. Okay, so everybody remember the Moodle page for this module? The amazing Moodle page. Some of you may have noticed already that there's an exercise there that we're going to work on today. We did an exercise a few weeks ago called Exercise Identifying Objects. Today we're doing part 2 of that exercise. This one's called Identifying Responsibilities. So let's look at it. I have it already. I guess I can look at it here. I hope everybody can see that. So exercise object-oriented design and identifying responsibilities. Given the partial specification below, identify a list of candidate objects and their responsibilities. Record them on a light version of the class cards. A class name at the top followed by the list of responsibilities. This exercise is to be done in groups, and the specification is adapted from that book that I've been referring to a lot. And it's the drawing editor again, right? It's the exact same partial specification as the last exercise, but this time you identify the candidate objects and their responsibilities. So you already have the candidate objects. And now the question is, how do you identify responsibilities? And then you actually assign the responsibilities to the candidate objects. Does that make any sense to anyone? So it's really part 2 of the exercise we already did. And by the way, this may or may not be very, very good preparation for the tests, the software engineering test. So you have 20 minutes to work on this, and then we're going to go over the solution. And you are allowed to ask questions during this exercise, and I will give some hints. I'm not going to give all the hints right away because it takes away from the learning experience a little bit. It's better if you try to work on a problem, get stuck, and then get some hints rather than just immediately getting the hints. It's a better learning process. Any questions? Okay, good. I'm guessing everybody will have, this will be an easy exercise for everyone then. Does anybody know how to start? How to start this exercise? Anybody know what a good starting point is? A good starting point is to look at the lecture on identifying responsibilities. So we have a lecture on identifying responsibilities, and there are 2 slides. They're called Identifying Responsibilities. How to identify responsibilities. If you can find those 2 slides, that's a very good starting point for this exercise. So I don't see anybody with the responsibility slides. I'm a little bit surprised. So if we go to the beautiful Moodle page, you'll see there's a special lecture on identifying responsibilities. It's near the beginning. There it is. Objects and responsibilities. So that was the first exercise, right? Guidelines for identifying objects. That may or may not be very good test preparation. And then there's the responsibilities. Identifying responsibilities. There are 2 slides there. No, I didn't see anybody looking at those slides. I don't think you can do this exercise if you don't know that information. Another little hint is that this exercise is more difficult than the identifying objects exercise. It's more difficult. It requires more use of the imagination a little bit. And it helps to have had experience. Well, that's true about anything. But it's helpful to have had experience with software development for this exercise. And there are multiple correct answers, by the way. So there were multiple correct answers for the first exercise, and there are multiple correct answers for this. This is not mathematics. This is natural language processing, really. That's really what it is. It's really interesting, actually. But natural language processing is not an exact science, because natural language is not very exact. It has a lot of uncertainty. Any questions about this? Is everybody making progress? I am using a pen and paper for this, by the way. So another hint, I think it would help to look at the solutions to the first exercise. So the solutions to the first exercise are here, so, somewhere. So there's the exercise. There's solutions to identifying objects exercise. I think that is helpful for this exercise.
Yeah. And then now I'm trying to fix that myself also. Just demonstrating. Yeah. I'm just getting rid of it. I have done the thing to the top two.
And by the way, I'm getting a psychic reading from some of you. I'm getting some signals. Some of you are thinking, is this really useful? Like, is this practical? Like, can we use this information? Is this a transferable skill? Who was thinking that? I was getting a signal from somebody. Well, I claim the answer is yes. So what is this exercise? This exercise is an organizational exercise. It's trying to train you to organize objects, responsibilities, and responsibilities are associated with methods. So really, when you think of a responsibility, it's a method. So we're trying to train our brains to organize objects and methods inside of a piece of software. And that turns out to be extremely important because your software programs might have thousands of objects and millions of lines of code. You all know that these programs are big. So the bigger something is, the more carefully we have to organize it. We have to organize the information. Right? So we're learning about how to organize the information. And a very good software developer thinks carefully about this. They think very carefully, what objects do I need to get this job done? And how should they be organized? What methods do I need? And where do those methods go? Like, you don't want to put random methods in random classes. You want to think carefully, like, when you're writing a method, which class should it go into, for example? A good software developer thinks about these things. They really think carefully, and I spent a lot of time thinking about this stuff at my software development job. The failing one. Which I'm going to talk about next week, by the way, on Tuesday. And the consequence of not thinking about this stuff leads to a very chaotic piece of software, and a piece of software that will fail. That's interesting. Anybody want to share their answers with the rest of the class? Shall we start to look at this? So if we look at the identifying responsibilities slide, step 1, examine verbs in the requirements specification. So let's do that. And it's funny, I'm trying to record this time. I'm gonna try to make a better recording than last time, because last time it didn't. So last time I tried to put the camcorder like pointing there. Now I'm trying to point the camcorder directly at the paper. See how it works. So examine verbs. Anybody remember what verbs are? Does anybody remember the definition of a verb from like grammar school or primary school?
Doing words like actions.
Action words. Yes, that's the definition I remember. Okay, so last time we remember in objects we went through and identified the nouns. This time we're going through and identifying the verbs. So the drawing editor is a verb. Right? Now, I'm just going to go through and identify the verbs first, and then some of them may have different implications. Some of them may be more important than others. Right? But is a verb, and it does imply something. Does anybody know what it implies? That's something we're going to learn today.
Is it inheritance?
It implies existence. And it implies in order for something to exist, what do we have to do in software? That's a great question. In order for something to exist, what do we have to do in software? Anybody? Name? Nikki, I can't see very well in the dark.
Create an object?
Yes, thank you. You have to instantiate it. Yes, thank you. You made my day. Okay, the drawing editor is interactive graphics editor. With it, users can create and edit drawings composed of lines, triangles, ellipses, and text. Tools control the mode of operation. So in this case, control is a verb, the way it's being used. Tools control the mode of operation of the editor. Exactly one tool is active at any given time. I'm going to highlight that is again. Two kinds of tools exist. That's funny. That's a funny way of expressing it. But anyways, exist in this case is a verb. The selection tool and creation tools. When the selection tool is active, So there's that is again. It's not a very nice verb in this case, but it's still a verb. Existing drawing elements can be selected. So I'm leaving out the be there. Can be selected with the cursor. One or more drawing elements can be selected and manipulated. I'm highlighting those as verbs. If several drawing elements are selected, I'm leaving out the are, because that's something like a helper verb or something. There's a name for that, but I can't remember what it is. They can be manipulated as if they were a single element. So there it is, manipulated again. As if they were a single element. Okay, this is not a very important verb, but just for the sake of this exercise, I'm literally going through and highlighting the verbs. Right? Were is a verb. Right? The past tense of be. Elements that have been selected have been selected. I'm not going to highlight the have been part. Strictly speaking, I could, but that's like just the past participle of selected, right? In this way, are referred to as, okay, are referred to, that's a verb actually, are referred to as the current selection. The current selection is indicated visually by displaying the control points for the element. Clicking on and dragging a control point modifies the element with which the control point is associated. One of the reasons this is weird is because it's written in the passive tense. So the passive tense tries to kind of eliminate the subject and the object. There's a hidden subject in there. So let's see, everybody can see this, yeah? When a creation tool is active, the current selection is empty. The cursor changes in different ways according to the specific creation tool, and the user can create an element of the selected kind. After the element is created, the selection tool is made active, and the newly created element becomes the current selection. So that is step one, highlighting the verbs. Any questions about highlighting the verbs? Good. I left out some of the helper verbs, but that's, Okay, so what's the next step if I look at this slide? Examine information nouns in the required specification. They may be an attribute of a class or a part of a composite class. Information words can imply how much, how many, how big. So those are variables in the, they turn out to be variables in the objects. But I'm not going to go through and highlight all the information nouns. I'll just point out an example of an information noun where the users can create heteros. Tools control the mode of operation. Mode of operation will turn into like an attribute of an object. Two kinds of tools is selection tool and creation tool. Current selection. Okay, then step 3, perform a system walkthrough. Now, actually, I could modify this slide to be a little bit more instructive. But then, what we have to do is this is our list of see if I can. Of objects from the last time. Kind of folding this. Is that visible? Is that visible? No, not exactly. Okay, this is going to be a bit tricky. Is it visible now? Is it visible now? Oh, not fully. The top is still getting cut off. Okay. Let's try. How about now? Almost. Still it's getting cut off. Looks like. Oh, I can adjust the camera, I guess. There we go. That's better. Okay, so next we have our list of classes from the last time, right? And we have now our action verbs which imply responsibilities. The next step is to assign responsibilities to objects. So this is where it's more difficult than last time. We have to assign responsibilities to the objects, right? And if I look at that first that is referring to the drawing editor, right? The drawing editor exists. So I'm actually going to put like constructor here. And that's going to be implied for all of the objects. They all need a constructor, right? They all need a way to be instantiated. Okay, so create and edit drawings. So somehow we need to be able to create and edit drawings. Look, create and edit are associated with drawings. So look, create and edit. So those are two responsibilities, or two action verbs that I am assigning to the objects. And if I use my imagination, it says perform a system walkthrough. I'm going to need to be able to create and edit more than just a drawing, right? If I look at this list of objects, isn't it true? I'm going to need to be able to create and edit a line. I'm going to need to be able to create and edit a rectangle. I'm going to need to be able to create and edit an ellipse. I'm going to need to be able to create and edit text, right? That's something I can derive by looking at my list of objects. It might not be stated explicitly in the requirement specification, but based on my imagination and my knowledge of the drawing editor and my knowledge of software engineering, I know I'm going to need those methods, those responsibilities. Okay, so let's go. Let's create and edit. Tools control the mode of operation. So that's a little bit tricky. Where is that control going to go? Tools control the mode of operation. So I don't know the answer to that exactly. So I'm gonna put in something like here, control mode of operation. Can everybody see that? It's taking an educated guess, but that could change at some point. Like, who controls the mode of operation, that's up for debate. Which object should get that responsibility? Where are we? Okay, exactly one tool is active at any time. So is active, by the way, is going to then be one of those information nouns. So selection tool is, and that implies that one of these tools is going to be active, right, at any given time. When the selection tool is active, existing draw elements can be selected. So selection tool, right, is going to be responsible for the select responsibility. The cursor, okay, the cursor's not in this list, is it? The cursor is a Java class already. We remember that from last time, and we can use it for selection. One or more drawing elements can be selected, right, using the selection tool, and manipulated. Okay, there's drawing elements, there's manipulated. Anybody know, manipulated's not really a word we use in computer science, is it? It's not a nice word, because it's like wishy-washy. A lot of words are wishy-washy. What am I going to replace manipulated with? Anybody? That's more, that's a nicer word that we use in computer science. Or in a drawing editor. Anybody? I would like to replace it. I don't like the word manipulated. I would like to replace it with either edit. Edit is possible, right? Like we have this edit responsibility already. We could have edit. I'll write them both down. The other word I really like is update. I really like that. So I'm going to just write it down. Right, in a drawing package, we can edit figures. In computer science, that corresponds to an update operation, doesn't it? Like take the existing data and update it. So I've just written those both down to sort out later on. Okay, so manipulated is if they were a single element. So that implies, by the way, that the drawing collection, that I wrote this, there's an implied drawing collection class there. That implies that there can be like a grouping. That's very advanced. So I wouldn't, on a test, for example, I wouldn't expect everybody to get that. Okay, so if one or more drawing elements can be selected and manipulated, so if several drawing elements are selected, they can be manipulated as if they were a single element, right? So group and edit again. Elements that have been, so there's the elements, right? So there's an element, drawing element class already. If several drawing elements are selected, they can be manipulated as if they were a single element. So we could have a class called drawing element collection, also, like drawing collection with group and edit. In this way, they are referred to as the current selection. Okay, selected and referred to. That's a very tricky verb. Referred to the current selection. Current selection looks like it's going to turn into an attribute rather than an object, by the way, in our final design. This current selection is indicated visually by displaying the control points. So control points are going to have a display method, right? If we're introducing a display method for control points, that implies that other objects are going to have a display responsibility too, aren't they? Right? We need to see these things. We need to see, we need to be able to see these things, right? Display. We need to be able to display lines. We need to be able to display rectangles. We need to be able to display ellipses and text. Display. We need to be able to display drawings. Right? We need to be able to display a drawing collection. Current selection, that implies we need to be able to display the current selection. Right? So this is a drawing editor. Everything needs to be displayed, almost everything. Everything we create that can be created, that we can draw, needs to be displayed. So again, I'm using my imagination there. I see, oh, we have this display responsibility. It's assigned to control points, but really I know that everything needs to be displayed, right? Like we have to be able to show everything. Clicking on and dragging a control point, so clicking and dragging, where that would go, actually, that would go in the cursor class, which I didn't write down. Click, drag. I'm guessing that must already be in the Java API, right? A control point modifies the element with which the control point is associated. So control point modifies. There's a verb I don't like again. It's just like manipulated, isn't it? We don't really use the word modify very much in computer science. What do we use instead? Anyone? We use, instead of modify, because it's very confusing, isn't it? Imagine we wrote down control point modify. That would be very confusing. So we're just going to use edit again and update. Those are better words, right? And then we see the pattern, right? Edit, 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 display, display. There's a pattern, right? We don't want to use like edit, modify, manipulate. That's not very nice, is it? It's nice to just have edit and update, for example. Okay, clicking and dragging, where am I? Modifies the element for which the control point is associated. We already know that control point, needs to be instantiated. When a creation tool is active, so creation tool, there it is active, right? The current selection is empty. The cursor changes in different ways according to the specific creation tool. So I could put down cursor, like, again, update. We don't like change. That's not a very nice word for computer scientists, right? We use edit or update, something like that. It's a little bit nicer, more informative. In different ways, according to the specific creation tool, the user can create an element. So drawing element, edit. So we have this implicit constructor everywhere. I didn't write down constructor everywhere right on this paper, but it's there. It's implicit in all the objects. After the element is created, the selection tool is made active. The selection tool, is made active, and the newly created element becomes the current selection. So that is something we have to really work on. So that's the constructor right there. The selection tool is made active. For me, that implies that the cursor, can control which tool is active, right? But after the constructor of the element, drawing element, the selection tool is made active, right? Automatically. So nobody has to perform that operation explicitly. It's done. It can be done automatically. It looks like from this requirement specification, and the newly created element becomes the current selection. Right. So this looks like it's going to be more like an attribute than an actual, or some sort of a pointer, right? Rather than necessarily, it doesn't automatically have to be an object. Questions so far? So this is a more difficult exercise than the identifying objects exercise. So what did I just do? I went through, picked out all the verbs, and then I assigned them to the classes. I did some imaginary work, right? Assigning an explicit constructor to all the objects, changing that word manipulated to edit or update. And then I used my imagination again to think, oh, all of these need to be edited and updated, these elements. And then I did that for the whole partial requirements specification. Any questions about that? And then the last step is to actually try to document this in a class card style. And I think I forgot to download those solutions. So let me do that now. Oh man, what a pain. Does this drive anybody else crazy? Or is it just me? I have the solutions typed up, but I forgot to download them. I hope I have. If not, I will have to do it after lecture. Exercise 2. I see. Okay, I forgot to upload the solutions. This is what the solutions look like. Yeah. So the partial solution to the in-class exercise 2, that's what it looks like. So I have a class called Drawing Editor followed by a list of responsibilities. Controls the main flow of an application where the flow of execution starts and ends, instantiates the program, initializes the GUI, initializes any other necessary resources, and responsible for a clean exit. Question?
We're meant to be saying anything before we can't.
Oh, sorry. I need to switch. Thank you. Switch. So this is what the solutions look like, the final solutions. Right? There's the drawing editor class with the responsibilities. So that was the first object. There's the user class and its responsibilities. Creating a new user, that's the constructor. saving a username and password. So that is not in the requirement specification. Saving username and password, it's not there actually. I just used my imagination for that. Associating a user with a drawing, that's also based on my imagination, a walkthrough of the program, right? Every drawing is going to be associated with a user. If I imagine somebody using that drawing editor program, deleting a user, right? We know that from experience, we'll need to delete objects, right? If we have a constructor, that implies we need a delete as well. Drawing has responsibilities creating, that's the constructor again, editing, saving, displaying, and deleting. And it's like that for the other objects as well. Okay, we're out of time. I will upload the solutions to Moodle, and then you can have a look at them. I hope everybody found that informative. And it may or may not be very good preparation for the tests. And have a good weekend.